Welcome to Ask and Learn.
We're asked to construct a finite-state automaton that recognizes the set of bit strings consisting of a 0 followed by a string with an odd number of ones. So let S be the set of all bit strings starting with a 0 followed by an odd number of ones. I'm not really sure if there's a much simpler way to write this, so I'm just going to use this full description. And let S0 be a start state. Consider the empty string. The empty string does not have a 0, so it follows that the empty string is not recognized. Therefore, S0 is not a final state. And let's consider 3 other states. So S1 is going to represent there are an even number of ones. As long as the string starts with a 0 and does not contain other zeros. Okay, and then S2 is going to represent that there are an odd number of ones. And finally, S3 is going to represent that the string starts with a 1. Now let's consider different transitions. So let's suppose that we're at S0. So the input is 0 at S0. Then we're going to move from S0 to S1. Because there are 0 ones, so an even number of ones. And suppose instead that the input is a 1. At S0. Then we're going to move to S3. And we see that we're going to remain at S3 no matter what the input is. Now, suppose again that the bit string starts with a 0. So let's suppose that the remaining string has an even number of ones. Then, if we're at S1, so we're either going to remain at S1 or move from S2 to S1. And let's suppose that the remaining string has an odd number of ones. Actually, in this case, since it has an even number of ones, we're just going to remain at S1. And if the remaining string has an odd number of ones, then we're going to move from S1 to S2. We can kind of break this down a little bit. So what this really means is, suppose that we're at S1 and the input is a 1. Then originally I had an even number of ones, so we're going to move from S1 to S2. And of course, if the input is 0, otherwise we're going to remain at S1. Now suppose that the input is 1 at S2. So at S2 we had an odd number of ones, and so now we have an even number of ones. So we're going to move to S1. Otherwise, if the input is a 0, then we're going to remain at S2.